This is Viterbi Voices, your chance to hear stories about research, classes, student life, and more.
Directly from our students, faculty, and other members of our engineering community. All right here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
Welcome back into Viterbi Voices and Happy New Year.
Yes.
This is our first episode of the new year. Happy 2020, Audrey.
Oh my goodness. Wow. That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Now, full disclosure, we're recording this a few weeks out from that. So to us, currently, it's not 2020
the
yet.
The new decade has not hit us.
Right, the new decade.
Yeah.
There's arguments about whether it's actually the decade or not. It doesn't start till 2021.
I feel like it starts in 2020.
Because this would be year zero.
But zero is the beginning.
See, we could debate this. Again, I haven't read all the articles. I just saw the headlines.
Right.
Anyway, as usual, I'm one of your hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma, Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And my name is Audrey Roberts. I'm a junior studying mechanical engineering here at USC.
I'm sorry, I stepped all over your line. And this episode is our second in a series of conversations with alumni. This is Jason Scott.
Yes. So this is episode 135, and this is a super cool conversation with an alumni, Jason Scott, who is also kind of part of this first class of what is now the Viterbi Student Ambassadors. And he is not just an engineer today, he's an artist, he's a manager. It's really incredible to hear his story because he was really interested in cinema and special effects like his whole life, and has stuck to that mission, came to USC, studied computer science, but was very involved in the School of Cinematic Arts and still is to this day. And now he directs an entire team of artists and also engineers working on special effects and some super great movies that have come out recently and over the past decade. So, yeah, it was really cool to learn about it.
12 Marvel films he's worked on. We've got a whole suite of DreamWorks films that he's worked on.
Life of Pi,
Kung Fu Panda. He was on Ant-Man. He was on all these ones that are being considered for Oscars this year. I think he's got his hands on at least the majority of them. So this is a cool deal. And we'll get out of the way so you can jump in to learn more about special effects in cinema. But again, my apologies up front about my old man reminiscing that I do with Jason, because he was one of the first students that I ever worked with here at USC in my role, and kind of helped build up a lot of this stuff. So there's a lot of memory lane stuff. So,
but some interesting discussion about admission as well, and kind of how we can engage with students and share our stories. So that's cool too.
Totally. So one more thing before you get into Jason is that kind of an audio warning. We recorded this basically like recording a Skype conversation. So obviously he was not here with us recording. He was in Adelaide, Australia. It was tomorrow.
At 5:30 in the morning.
5:30 in the morning his time. So he said he normally got up so I don't know, whatever. It's crazy, but he. So just as far as an audio stuff goes, you might hear a couple delays. Obviously he's just recording across his computer, but it's still a quality conversation. But I just want to give a fair warning before we get into the episode. So without further ado, here is Jason Scott from Australia. Well, it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, you too. I was trying to think the other day. I'm trying to remember if it's probably been 3 or 4 years. I probably should have looked it up since I last saw you. Probably a Discover SC event, or I dropped by or something.
I feel like you dropped by. I think you want to say 3 to 4 years. I think that's more like 8 or 9.
Yeah, that's probably true.
Well, thanks so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. We kind of created a really makeshift setup here because, long story short, we did our first alumni interview last week with Ali Fakari, if you remember Ali.
Oh yeah.
And he came by actually to the office, and our whole recording system broke.
Oh.
Basically, the power supply stopped working, and so we kind of had to make a new one up real quick. And then with yours today, we're kind of just hooking into this online system. And then of course this morning, USC network connectivity was completely down, so I think we're just recovering from that. So far it's going okay. But this is Audrey.
Hi, I'm Audrey. Nice to meet you.
Hi, Audrey. Nice to
I'm a
meet you as well.
junior studying mechanical engineering here, so.
Okay. And I think I saw something about future cinema. Was that you as
Yes,
well?
that's my minor. Yeah, I was reading about sort of the stuff you do, so, and you're connected with the School of Cinematic Arts as well, so I'm interested to hear about it.
Why
Yeah.
don't we start? Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No,
Go
go ahead,
ahead.
Paul.
Oh, dude, not important. Go for it.
Yeah, no, I definitely was in there as soon as I got to SC. It was always the kind of plan. Even part of the reason I chose USC was so I could do both and be connected to the film school. And so I even, still do a lot with them as well. Now it's obviously, distance is a problem, but
Yeah.
since my, I guess, direct career is, directly in the industry, then there's a lot of kind of connection and communication with them through a number of things.
It's great.
But yeah, my minor was just general cinema, but I did a lot. I mean, at the time there were only 2 minors. Now I went through the list the other day and there's like 25 or something
Yeah,
like
there's
that.
so many.
Cool. Yeah, but it was just cinema and animation, which is what I did back then.
It's awesome.
Yeah, so what is future cinema anyway? I'm not even actually, I probably should have spent more time and read it.
I've asked this question like 3 times myself, man, and I still.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like, I think fully encompassing what future cinema itself is it's kind of looking ahead at ways in which we're going to use like moving picture storytelling in the future. So not necessarily on a screen, but like virtual reality, augmented reality, even like kind of installation art. So I think future cinema, it's more like media art. It's in the media arts and practice program. So it's just kind of taking the idea of film off the screen, I would say. But also there's like traditional filmmaking in it too. Like I'm taking a sort of a documentary class next semester. This semester I took an animation 3D modeling class, so kind of jumps around. But
nice.
Yeah, it's fun. I like it.
So now you come work for us. So
in Australia, it's pretty appealing.
Yeah, let's transition that to your story, man. I think we got a lot of ground to cover, but I'm sure we'll jump around as much as we can. But I mean, you and I, we've known each other for I think 20 years now.
Yeah, August '99, so a little over
Weird.
20 years. Yeah.
So
Thanks for making us both feel old.
Dude, working here, I feel old on the daily, like, every day. So why don't you tell everybody your story, like where you came, because you have a really interesting high school perspective and how you found yourself at USC.
So yeah, it actually backs up even to middle school. So gonna sound weird, but I was thinking about it the other day. It's all kind of connected in my head because when I was in 8th grade, through a weird couple of things, I really decided I wanted to do visual effects. Actually, time even just did special effects, since it was miniatures and stop motion animation, a bunch of things. And I was in love with Star Wars, and at the time there was really only one company, and so I actually sent a fax to Industrial Light and Magic, and in '94 when I was living in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and they actually sent a letter back, and I still have it. Right now it's in storage in LA.
Really?
And I basically said, hey, I'd love to work for you. What do I got to do? And they said, we don't have a particular, school or anything, but, we suggest, or all of our employees, study things like art and engineering and this and this and this. And here's a potential list of suggested schools. And USC was in there. I looked at that, and because my family was from LA and they were familiar with USC, and so I'd kind of grown up hearing about it. And then I knew George Lucas went to USC. It kind of started to cement in my mind, oh, that's the school for me. And so actually my scholarship essay, and I believe the scholarship deadline's tomorrow. Is it still like December 10th?
It was December 1st, so we've already passed it.
Oh, okay, so close enough. Yeah, and I remember that that was what I kind of did my scholarship essay on, and I really wanted to go to USC for the whole time, especially because I could do both engineering and cinema. That was kind of always the plan for it, and yeah, and so when I was still kind of even toying between the schools, but between a number of things and talking to Louise Yates and kind of understanding of the flexibility that engineering gave for computer science. And I think after the first semester, realizing how much family there was in the School of Engineering, that kind of really cemented it for me to kind of stick through that and kind of put my major there and kind of put kind of cinema on top. And there wasn't a computer science minor at the time, so the opposite wasn't even really an option, but I still think it was definitely the best choice for me to kind of go in that direction. Yeah, so that was kind of setting me up for
That's awesome.
For my undergrad and everything.
So it was always special effect at the time, special effects in film. Was there ever a thought of actually just majoring in cinema, or was it just always like I'm going to go computer science?
It was because it was the 90s. There wasn't really there weren't really visual effects classes. I mean, I think there was one practical effects class in the cinema school, and there was the animation program. But the animation program was just for grad students, and so I think there was one 3D animation class. And this is the time. Even when I got interested at the beginning, it was all still about miniatures and stop motion, and I started reading more about the computer. I got interested in it only 2 years after Jurassic Park, so it was still kind of a fresh, kind of innovative thing. And then I was reading kind of special effects journals and stuff, and they kept talking more about the computer, and I could kind of see that was the kind of the trend. And there was a little bit, I think, of my parents kind of going, "Are you sure this film thing? Maybe you should have a backup career. So maybe computer science is safer, just in case." But it really started to kind of make sense that because I'd be able to get a certain amount of kind of film education through to be able to choose classes, I guess, and I figured the computer science part would be a lot harder. But because it was a little bit of going back and forth for that first semester, first year, and it really was the kind of the flexibility that the engineering school gave. And again, I will say it was really kind of a tight kind of family and the kind of the community and the programs. I think the film school has done a lot better since then. I know when I was there, we started like the Cinema Television Student Council and a couple other things to try to create more community, but engineering had that from day one, hands down.
Right. And while you were here, you were already doing a lot of like student films and working on special. I remember some sort of you were doing like a special effects like student organization or something like that, right?
Yeah. So there was it kind of had been dead actually. One of the let's see, I think it was in my orientation in the Scampus. There was a mention of SCFX, this special effects organization. So when I got there as a freshman, I started asking around at the cinema school, and people said, "Oh yeah, like they used to exist a few years ago, but it doesn't exist anymore. It died out." And even though it was referenced actually in the Campus. So my sophomore year, I went, "Geez, well then fine, I'm going to take the name back, and we're going to start it back up." And
was it
another
SCFX?
guy,
Is that what it was? Am I remembering that right?
yeah, SCFX,
SCFX.
yeah, was the name. And so the guy who restarted it with me, so I was a sophomore at the time, and he was a freshman. He's the editor of like the John Wick movies, and so we had kind of a good thing going, and so we kind of brought together any like-minded students and started, touring places and started working on student films and kind of had a really great run. It's still around, I still talk to new students who kind of pops up every few years, kind of the same problem that any student organization like that has.
Totally.
Yeah. I worked on John Chu's movies. He directed like Crazy Rich Asians and Now You See Me, the movies, and so he's successful. So we kind of have this nice group from those years that we're all I would say decently successful now and kind of stay in contact, which is a lot of fun.
That's awesome. If only you were like, 6 years younger, you would have been hanging out with Kevin Feige, right?
Yes, probably true. Yeah. I've done 12 Marvel movies in my career, so yeah,
12.
I'm still 12.
Wow.
Yeah, so I'm a little over 50%, and still trending. Yeah, it's still going.
I want to get to that in a second, but I had this flashback. I don't want to not lose this thought. I have this flashback to you I think you had the SCFX logo of the student organization. It was made to look like the THX logo. I'm having that like, is that right? Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, and that predates me. I don't claim
Okay,
I
that's not
did
you.
no
Okay.
copyright infringement. Yeah, yeah,
Well, I
yeah. Some
mean,
of the
when he was
original
go
guys.
ahead.
Sorry.
So go ahead. I'm sorry. I was stepping on you.
Some of the original people who were involved in it were like the guy who wrote Photoshop, John Knoll, and like he was at USC, and then later on, there's a kind of a group of guys who we still kind of connect with who worked on Titanic and the Alien movies and a bunch of different things. So there's kind of a nice legacy there from the kind of the 80s and 90s of the club before me.
Wow, that's cool. What do you remember about your time here studying computer science? I mean, other than obviously you did a lot of really cool cinema stuff, and I don't want to take that away from you, but when you look back on that time, what are the things that pop up?
Oh, I guess academically or community or
First thing
people
pops in your
or
mind. Yeah, whatever.
um, geez, the people
Yeah.
was probably the first thing because we're still a lot of us are really close from that. The flexibility, for me, I actually because at the time there's only one undergrad computer graphics class in computer science. I took it, I don't know, as a sophomore, and then I was really kind of looking for more and what I could do. And Steve Schrader was the computer science advisor at the time. I think he's like head of advisement or
He,
something like
he's
that.
he's still
Or
there as like a different role, but yeah, he's still there.
yeah.
Very involved.
So it's probably been a couple years since he and I talked. So I went to him and I said, I really want to do this. And he said, well, there's two grad classes, and you're an undergrad, so we have to kind of do special permission and a bunch of stuff. And I think I had to meet with the chair of computer science, who was Medioni at the time, I think.
At the time, yeah, he's gone
Yeah,
on to
yeah,
become like an Amazon amazing person.
yeah, yeah. And so I got special kind of approval to take the grad classes, and uh, Matthew DeBrune taught them, who's now at Caltech, and that was a great kind of learning experience to be kind of the only undergrad in there, but really kind of stretched my thinking and a lot of um, kind of academic discussions in there. And I even just saw him a couple of weeks ago at SIGGRAPH Asia. It's our professional computer graphics course, and he was here in Australia, and he flew out. So we meet up every couple of years. So I still have these strong relationships, even with faculty from then. And then, but so the flexibility, the opportunity for those connections were really solid. And then I got to do research. That was another big thing. So it was still kind of within the graphics arena, but that started
Yeah.
off as a freshman. That was a really cool opportunity to be able to try different things and kind of it was still again within kind of computer graphics. I was pretty singularly focused, I think, academically
Yeah. Yeah.
along these lines. Um, yeah, I remember other projects and just being in the labs, not in a negative way. I think some people talk kind of, make jokes about being there at 2 in the morning and any number of memories there. But I think it was a pretty, still a fun memory, I guess, for
Sure.
402, the operating systems class, and then with Crowley, who's I think ITP
Yeah.
director.
Now he's in Iving Young now.
Oh
He's no
wow,
longer
nice.
in the Viterbi school, yeah. So he moved over there.
Okay. And so yeah, just definitely late, late, late
Lots
nights
of lots of work.
there.
Audrey and
Yeah.
I were just having that discussion about late nights because she's going into finals and doing final projects this last week, and
Yes.
it's just like,
But I agree with you. Like, even looking back on my past years, like, in the moment, there were some very painful late nights. But looking back, it's like my best friends were made then, and it's great memories of kind of, you know, learning, I guess, and getting something done, which is cool. But
yeah. I
It really is. Yeah.
it really you only remember the good stuff. I mean, and honestly, it's like it's that those hard work bonding experiences that kind of make these relationships what they are, because that's what holds up over time. And that always, like, Ollie was here last week and we talked briefly about it, but all I remember is that initial group of ambassadors that kind of started the whole thing, and you were key. You were one of the first. Like when I took this job in 2000, you were here
Yeah.
basically, And I remember everyone saying like, "Oh, this is Jason. I'm sure he's going to work with you just fine." And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, we start working together. And it was like me and you and Chris and Carrie and Kristen Sayuni, like all these names that were just like constantly in my office and help basically build up this whole thing that is now what Audrey and her peers do. And they kind of do it without me involved at all now. But that was like, I think of hard times, like we were doing a lot of work, and for me, that was my job. You guys were doing that on top of your schoolwork, and that was, I just can't thank you enough for all that stuff. That was really awesome.
I was thinking about that the other day, and I know you asked, specifically computer science, but there were other parts of just being in engineering school, in the School of Engineering at the time, and it's hard to, I can't underestimate, or sorry, I can't overestimate, I guess, the benefit that program was for me. And this is going to sound so weird because I feel like it's kissing up to you, but I have no need to do that for you now, 20 years later. But however you came into that, to fashion that program. And I remember that first, I think we did multiple sessions in, gosh, I can't remember. It's like the aerospace engineering building. We had a room there, and we were there at night, you and Matthew, and we did a couple of nights. I remember this notebook, and we're going through this. It was all such fresh information that I still use today. And I think it was a mix of understanding people and talking about our own experiences and all these other things that it's weird to say how much communication and leadership I developed through that wasn't necessarily kind of through school necessarily. Easily reference a lot of that. It was a huge deal. I think, and there were only, I want to say 8 of us at the beginning, or 10. It was a smaller group.
It was a small group that first year. Yeah. It was, for lack of a better term, I don't think this was ever discussed, nor was it ever, conceptualized at this point. But looking back on it, that was the pilot group. Which was spring 2001. The pilot group was maybe 10, 12, I don't remember. And I tell all the younger students today, because we're old now.
Yes.
It was like, hey, we got this idea. We need people to do student panels, and it was. But then I to give credit where credit's due, I pulled a lot of that information from what I was given and trained in our orientation programs, and then just kind of modified and kind of shifted what we did. And then I think a lot of what you're talking about is like what we did with communication styles, and what we talked about with like listening exercises, and we talked about a staple of that time, which is a staple today, is Maslow's hierarchy of needs and understanding where students are in the developmental process. And we did a lot of talk about that, and that's still a big anchor of how we do the ambassador program now. But to shift the focus back on you, because I think this is a big deal, is in that little team, we started talking about, well, what can we do that's cooler? What can we do that's a little more unique? And I honestly do not know where the idea came from. I knew it had to come from either you or Chris, but all of a sudden the word CD-ROM came up, and I know that sounds so silly.
ancient terms.
But that was go ahead.
A crazy thing. So I had taken a couple of so many things kind of came together at the right time. There were a couple of kind of ITP interactive media classes where we were doing Flash and Macromedia Director, and trying to build these kinds of things. And I think we were talking about the mailers, because 2099 was the big USC mailer that was won all these awards, how large it was, and all these other things. And you were starting to get involved, I think, with the more of it from admissions from this engineering, and somehow that did come into this. Hey, we could do this better, right? And why don't we ship out? The shipping of this is not going to be that big of a deal. What can we do with this? And that was a freaky project that kind of came together, and I think it would way underestimated it at the beginning of what it would take, and and splitting up the work, and in terms of a graphic designer and the programming behind it, and the filming the videos and the interviews and the pictures, and started kind of
you and I were just dumb enough to think, hey, we can do this.
Oh yeah, exactly. But that was such an amazing thing to see how like it came out and gets mailed out to like thousands and thousands of people. And I guess we were juniors at the time. Chris was a sophomore, I guess.
Yeah.
Was mind blowing that we could do something like that. Yeah, now it sounds like, what do you mean? Why wouldn't you just do a website? Like, why wouldn't you, why wouldn't you do this? Why wouldn't you do that? But yeah, you couldn't to have that amount of video and graphics and interactivity and all these things all these kind of ideas we were trying to present and yeah, it was crazy that we just looking back at it felt so daunting, I think, as we kind of got into it. At the beginning, yeah, we thought it was easy.
If we ever knew what we were doing, we would have said there's no way we can pull this off.
No.
So this was a CD essentially that you sent to admitted students that kind of gave information about the school in a variety of mediums, right?
Yeah. So they would go ahead. Yeah.
Go ahead. You go ahead. You explain it. They hear from you all the time.
So yeah, it was I mean, it's hard to tell if you weren't around in the 90s, but
I was around in the 90s, barely.
Oh, okay, that's great.
Wait, what year were you born?
1999.
Yeah. Okay, so you were 2. You're 1.5.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Yeah, all this, the admissions materials kind of just to kind of gain interest, I guess, in the school, was, all print and I'm sure there was something else on a website and stuff like that. But we realized there were all these other stories.
There were websites.
Oh, there wasn't. Okay.
No.
There was all this other stuff that we realized we were not just benefiting. The students who were able to visit the campus were able to benefit from hearing our stories and kind of hearing this wider range of information and kind of rounding out the sense of what it meant to be a student at USC and in the School of Engineering. And so yeah, they would plop in a CD and it would, you gotta be kidding me, showing it to me right now. That's V3?
So I'm looking right now. I do have, this is V3, so this is version 3.
Yeah.
At this time we called it Viterbi Interactive.
Yes. This is all still pre-Viterbi. Viterbi, you got the donation after I graduated. Yeah.
So screenshots.
Yeah.
And this is actually this is actually a well-formed version. The first one's much more challenging, but my favorite
I have it. It's all in storage in LA. But yeah, it was
my favorite is the Made with Macromedia logo.
Yes.
This doesn't
Made
exist.
with Macromedia. But yeah, they would drop in the CD, start up a program, and we had to. All these things that we hadn't even considered, and luckily we had a little bit of consulting from one of the professors in ITP, Richard Wayness, who's at UCLA now. But we had to make sure it ran on Windows and Mac, and we had to make sure it could auto start and all the videos work. So we did all this testing on different kinds of computers. All these things we had no clue when we said, oh yeah, here's a good idea, and it'll cost this much, Luis, and oh yeah, it'll be fine. They would drop it in and be able to kind of select our different, ambassadors and kind of, I think we did we had this structure, three different kind of stories for each ambassador.
We had 3 stories for each ambassador, and then we, just because of time constraints, we said we're going to make a video about one of them.
Yes. Yeah. So write-ups and pictures for all 3, and then a video for each one. And Carrie Blaylock was really instrumental in coordinating all the filming. Paul's, I assume, still doing it. Kind of at the time, seeming side interest in graphic design was significantly, helpful because we, none of us had that kind of aspect, and we hadn't planned for that. And yeah, it just kind of came together over a few months. We definitely had a deadline for shipping, but I think getting the box back, that was a weird, I remember Paul calling us in and saying, the box is here, and having this stack of these mailers and just realizing this thing is real, and it wasn't just a thing we were practicing anymore on the computer. And we'd burn, I'd burn them at home, and I was living in Parkside at the time, and just trying to make sure it was working. And we'd have the demo CD, we'd walk around and try it on different people's computers in the office, and then realizing, oh geez, here's this thing and it's going to go out, and then hearing the response, and Paul you could speak more of that. I think it was a a huge leap forward. And I don't remember too many people doing anything like that at the time.
No one else was doing it. I have a different memory of something that you may not know or remember, but we did all this work. And so at that time, it meant like, okay, Jason, you're taking it. You hadn't even taken the class yet, if I remember correctly, on like whatever the macromedia was.
I take like the beginning one, not enough to actually do this. Yeah.
But it was like, yeah, well, you'll have the class and this will help, right? And we'll figure it out. And so you do that. And I have like an interest in graphic design. I have maybe some Photoshop experience. That's basically it. And so I remember multiple things. One, we had to write all the content. Like over there, you can see the binder. Like we, just to prove how much writing it was, I printed out. You see CD-ROM?
Yes, CD-ROM.
When we print out all the writing, it's this many. I'm holding up about a 3-inch binder. Like that's printed every page, just to show how much writing went into this thing. And we had all the student bios, we had all the major information, we had all the photography. We had to go buy a camera. Like I was like, we need to film somebody, so we had to go buy a video camera. We had to go buy like microphone equipment. So like, this is like the first step down this road. We had to get the software package, which I think you somehow found from the class. Like we were running off of like
we paid for it. No, we did get all the proper licensing. If I am not, if anything, but legal and ethical when it comes to this. Yeah,
I think we. Sure. So we got the licensing. So put this way, I know that I never had it running. Like it was just not for me. It was like you got it through your student scenario.
Yes, to do the authoring. But then we had to get the right QuickTime license
we did have to get a QuickTime
distribution.
License. Yeah. We had to get all the right language down. We had to understand minimum system requirements of like how it would run and what would it run on and how can we make sure this is going to make sense. And it was just complicated. We get all this stuff done and we write it and like I think we're ready to go and I go like turn in kind of like an idea to the bosses, right? To Matt and Louise. And they're like, no. And they shut us down. I don't know if you remember this.
I definitely did not remember that, yeah.
So I don't know the exact time on this, but let's say that we did this for 2001 or 2002. It didn't come out till 2003. Like, so let's say it was we did our first draft for your junior year. It didn't come out till your senior year.
Really?
Yeah. No, I got
right. Yeah.
I got raked across the coals. Like I got in serious trouble. Like I was basically, and in the nicest way, it was a constant lesson of what I talk to you guys about now, which is this idea of understanding direction and establishing check-in points with your superiors and what it like. I say to them, we're going to go make a CD-ROM and it's going to cost this much money. I don't know if you know, it was not like, oh yeah, sure, go ahead and spend $15,000, which is what it ended up costing, that we didn't have budget for. It was like, sure, go do it. And then we created a final product and turned it in and say, we need 15 grand. It's like, you can't do that, Paul. That's not how this whole thing works.
I definitely did not know any of this.
And we need to edit this. And I understand your approach and I agree with your approach, but we need to make sure that everything's in line. And like, I need to see, proof of concept. I need to be able to see minimum viable product. We need to kind of go through this and test it. And I need to be part of that testing process. And I was like, I was so upset. I had no idea what was going on. But I now use that as like training for the BSAs about like, you got an idea, go with it. But when I say go with it, that means that I always draw out like a compass on my whiteboard. I'm like, I'm saying go here. You assume that that's a straight path. But what if you run into a problem or I run into a problem? You need to check back in and say, is this still right? I'm like, no, go 3 degrees to the right. No, go 3 degrees to the left. Oh, wait, turn out that's all wrong. Come back. We're going to go a whole different direction. So I give this whole metaphorical explanation now about exactly the lesson that I learned on this project, which was like, we thought it was cool. And it turns out, oh, no, this is a bigger deal. And so we got to get all this money, which was a lot of money at the time, and figure it all out. Turns out it worked out great. We get it out. It was groundbreaking. You're totally right. I think we got a lot of great feedback. We were the first at USC to really start using multimedia in our campaigns. And you cut to now, I mean, our Viterbi Voices website is essentially built on that entire bone infrastructure, that skeleton, where we have the student. Originally, it was exactly the same. I'm a student. Here are my 3 things that I do. Here's my story. Here's my bio. And here's a video for each one of them. We transitioned over that time. We went to like USB keys where we were sending out USB keys. It turned into the name. We called it V key at the time. Then we had a little like
before.
different versions of keys. Like ones were shaped like a key, one was shaped like a credit card. Like we got a little fancy with it. We switched over to Flash. We had Flash memory leak problems. We were crashing computers. It was like everything was an evolution to basically now completely online. And now we switch everything to Viterbi Voices is live all the time. We've got a YouTube channel that runs consistently with all new content. It's not a big deal to go produce videos, just like get something up, go fast with Instagram TV, IGTV. Our podcast, this podcast is built on that same model, which is get stories, get content, put it up. And so, I mean, basically, I have you specifically, but also as an overall team, used because you were just as dumb as I was to say, sure, we could do this. But me, you, Chris, Carrie, Kristen, I mean, I think of you four as a big deal. Like I remember I asked a specific night to take you guys out to dinner because like we just launched and you guys were either graduating or it was done. I was like, this is a big deal. We just like launched this serious thing. And that established the legitimacy of the ambassador program, where like that's now honestly a central part of my entire operating budget is these fantastic students. And to share something, they didn't get paid.
We
had a stipend.
We had a stipend at the beginning. So I'm trying to remember, and because I might even be why I might have applied at the beginning, because I worked like 4 jobs to pay for college every semester. And I think, it was like, here's an extra, I don't know, $250, I think, the first semester or something.
That's what it was.
It was not a lot. And I think after the first year or something, it was coming close, I think, near to the end, I think they changed it to be a paid job. But once we realized we were participating in more panels and Discover and doing this and all
you guys are doing more work than most professional staff
side things. It was nice then to turn into an actual, like hourly job that it could supplement things. But yeah, we definitely did, probably all of us, including the second year, the group. I think that was the picture I put up on the LinkedIn alumni group the other day. I think even with the payment, because we knew there was a cap or something, we all still did more than that. Yeah. I think we all still participated in everything. I remember for that ambassador thing, like when we would come to preview USC, and we'd have people, host people and stay with us. It was kind of this last ditch. Okay, we still don't have X number of hosts. Okay, ambassadors, you're all taking 3 kids apiece. That's just how it's gonna work. You're the last ones. You're gonna make up the difference. So yeah, did that quite a number of years as well.
Yeah, this is all the Wild West days, like this stuff. Yeah, little different legal environment these days, and how some of that stuff goes down. But one thing, the last memory lane that I'll take you down is also thank you. It was either you or Chris, and I cannot remember who, and we'll have to get him next on the podcast to really fill out this whole story. But you all taught me a lot with using certain software related to graphic design. Like I taught myself most of it on my own, but the one thing that you guys taught me specifically was video editing. And you sat down on my computer and you're like, okay, this is how you use Premiere. And like, it was just this rough shot, like drop things in here, drop things in there. And that's the only training I've ever gotten on Premiere. And I still use it to this day. And every VSA that I've ever taught how to edit videos is because of these guys showing me. And so whenever I give
I apologize. Very sorry in advance.
But everyone that does video editing here, if they've never done it before, I show them how you guys showed me, and then they're off and running. So the legacy of your video editing has gone through decades of students here, and all the videos are basically your guys' tutorials. So thank you very much.
Nice. Yeah.
So and we use Premiere to this day. So you guys, you go through this whole time, and then you come out of college, and you go directly into what you wanted to do, right? I mean, like you had a lot of
with one small detour. So I actually I stuck around for 1 year. I tried the interactive media grad program had just started at the cinema school, and it was for a number of reasons, both good and bad, I decided to apply for that. And I was the second class, and I did one. It was a 3-year program. I did the first year, and through a number of things throughout that first year, realized I didn't really need to still be in school, and that I kind of had what I needed. I was interning at the time at a visual effects company anyway, and so I kind of pieced together, I'm kind of done with school, or I'm done with this program. This isn't quite the right fit for me. And so, yeah, then I just kind of jumped straight in. And so while during that intern program, when I was interning, and then they picked me up the summer after that first year. So I did Sky Captain of the World Tomorrow, Garfield the movie, and a couple other small things.
What company was this? I'm sorry.
It was called Stan Winston Digital. So
Stan Winston.
Stan Winston was a creature designer. He designed Alien and Predator and small characters. And so
just the little ones.
There, yeah. I put up a picture in the Stan Winston alumni group of the conference room. I'll have to send it to you, where we had this black table in the center, and it was this black conference room with kind of a shell, kind of a platform along the whole side, and then a second kind of tier, and it would be all the creatures. So there was like the T-Rex head for Jurassic Park in the corner, the Terminators kind of lined up on one side. It was the most badass conference room in all of Hollywood, I swear. And so I went from there to DreamWorks Animation, and it was funny. Up until this job, or maybe my last 2 jobs, every job I had, probably through 2015, was through a USC connection, and so that was a big deal. So I went to DreamWorks after that company that I had interned at, and then they hired me. And I was at DreamWorks for a few years and did everything from Shrek 2, the first Madagascar, all the way through Kung Fu Panda, and a little bit of the first How to Train Your Dragon. And then I went to a company called Rhythm and Hue Studios, where I was there for almost a decade. We won a couple of Oscars when I was there: Golden Compass, Life of Pi.
Just a couple of Oscars.
Well, yes, very, very.
They're so nonchalant.
It's super exciting. I remember the moment when we won for Golden Compass, and it was the old building. It's actually now the Tom Shoes building in Playa. And we had this big kind of center atrium area where there's a big stairway. And we had heard that Bill Westenhofer, the visual effects supervisor who won, had just gotten back from a trip, and he had the Oscar. And he walked down to the center. We were lined up at the top, like around the top, around the stairs, and people down. And we must have clapped and cheered for probably 10 minutes. And he was sitting there holding it, and he's crying. We're all crying. It was kind of this awesome moment. So then, like 7 or 8 years later, it's kind of visual effects history, and there's a couple documentaries about it. That company actually went bankrupt 2 weeks before we won the Oscar for Life of Pi. And so Life of Pi was this reverse emotion of bittersweet of, I was still there. I was one of the few that got to kind of survive the bankruptcy, and I was still employed by the company. But knowing that, seeing him win the Oscar on TV, and there's a whole thing about his speech got cut off as he was trying to draw attention to how the industry was being treated and a bunch of things. And just crying, but there's been this different way of going, wow, this amazing adventure that we had all had is kind of done. And he got to come back though and had that Oscar, and we all took pictures with him for that. And it was just kind of and we're still close. He just did Gemini Man, and so we're all kind of really, really, even here in Adelaide, that company I was at had offices in India and Malaysia and Taiwan, and so I would fly around between them. And so I had a lot of friendships developed with the offices in India, and a number of those employees are here in Australia. And so we have a monthly reunion lunch that we get together. So there's still some really tight family even from that. Yeah, so that was the story of a couple of Oscars, because it has even more kind of emotion and story kind of behind it.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, and through there, that company, and then the company after that, Method Studios, and then now we've done 12 Marvel movies as well. So that's kind of was kind of the next trend. It was kind of getting plugged into that, and surviving quite a number of those movies, but always having a kind of a USC connection through them as well.
And so is that Rising Sun Pictures? Is that where you're at now?
Yeah, so right now I'm Rising Sun Pictures. Yeah, I'm the head of 3D, so I oversee kind of all the 3D artists. So I have about 75 people on my team.
Wow.
I have split up in about six different departments, and we'll do several projects at a time. But this past year we did Ford versus Ferrari, which is the most recent one, which we're really proud of that movie. It's amazing, such a good movie. You definitely should see it. We did Spider-Man: Far From Home, Dumbo, Captain Marvel, and and Dark Phoenix, X-Men Dark Phoenix, and a couple other smaller things as well.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so we got a couple of upcoming projects. I'm trying to remember which ones I can say. I probably should double check that. But we're going to Amazon shows and Netflix shows and some Disney stuff and a bunch of other things.
And is your team primarily like animators then, or engineers as well? Like, what sort of role is on your team?
So that's a good point. So while my formal title is head of 3D, so that's all artists, but we currently don't have a CTO or a head of technology. And because of my background, I also kind of picked up a lot of those responsibilities. So I also involved quite heavily with our pipeline team, which is our software development team, production technology. And so there's a number of them who help write our tools and kind of pull a lot of our software together. And then kind of our systems infrastructure team. So that's everything from hardware, networking, storage systems, and then our kind of frontline data support and kind of massive compute kind of wrangling and data IO. So I kind of oversee, there's about 10, 50, 60, probably about 20 of them as well.
Wow.
And so my the day-to-day is supposed to be was originally supposed to be just on the artist side, but I think there was this kind of natural fit with my background and some of the positions I've had that I could kind of step into this leadership role with all the technology teams as well. But on the artists, it's all the different kinds of 3D graphics that you would kind of refer to. We have modelers, texture and look dev artists who do the painting and the shading, rigging and creature effects, which is the motion setting of that. I have a team of animators, a team of effects artists who do simulations and kind of dynamic effects. So there's quite a technical team in there, and then a lighting and rendering team who also. So that's kind of the artist side. There's a head of 2D, which is also who oversees all of our compositors, but he and I work really closely, and so we kind of at some points we kind of oversee everybody together. So overall we have 100 and some odd artists right now. We grow up to about 150. We're kind of on the medium size company. There's kind of tiers of sizes of company. You have kind of 2 guys in a garage to about 20 to 40 people. Then you have like the 100 to 200, 250 kind of company size, and then you have the like 1,000 company size, which is where I was before. Yeah, I've done those. Yeah.
So, you've been at some really, really big name, like for like the public's understanding, like big name companies, and then somewhere like Rising Sun Pictures, maybe huge in the special effects industry, but people don't hear it. What's the difference between working for something like DreamWorks and Rising Sun Pictures?
There's a couple different things. The first is DreamWorks, Disney, Pixar, Blue Sky. All these companies, because they do their own intellectual property, they are able to kind of do the whole process from beginning to end. Kind of the story, the voice actors come in and record there, and so that was an interesting thing to be at DreamWorks and kind of participate. It takes about 5 years to make an animated film. From hey, here's an idea to what's some art, what's some ideas, let's write a script, let's edit it, before we ever gets into the computer, and then having voice talent come in. I think I almost hit Dustin Hoffman in the head with a door one time as he was coming in to record for Kung Fu Panda, and so you get to kind of see that entire process, and it's a different kind of reward to see that on screen together as a family. Versus visual effects, even the large visual effects company, we're a vendor model, right? So we're hired then by the big studios, and we're extremely proud of our work. But it's kind of a different aspect where there's a certain amount of decision making that's already been done for the story and a number of things that you kind of participate in. But it's quite exciting in terms of company size. I really I really did appreciate being at the large companies, and I think I've been fortunate that the large companies I was at, both the way they set up the things as well as my position, I got to have an impact on the entire organization, so even 1,000 people. But that's typically more representative at a medium-sized company. So something like where I am today, like I can definitely sit down, craft a decision, whether that's a decision on software, on policy, on workflow, or anything, and kind of see it immediately represented. It's not always technical. It can be a social kind of impact, a leadership thing, time management, any kind of thing that can help create a better working environment for the team. And that's really rewarding to see a decision like that have immediate impact versus sometimes at a very large company, you can only really influence your direct team, or you see, or even have conflict if you decide, hey, here's a good thing for my team, but somebody else has for a different team has something, a completely different idea, and those things might run into each other. But that's also, I mean, those are exciting challenges in their own right, just in a different way.
Sure.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in Australia now?
Just over a year. So we got here last October.
Wow.
So I think last, or not, yeah. So about 10, what's that, 14, 15 months ago? The July 2018, I was just starting to think, hey, maybe I should look elsewhere for a job. And I was just starting to think like, oh, I'm kind of looking for some new challenges, and some things weren't kind of fitting where I currently was. And I had just updated my LinkedIn just to kind of get it ready, and was just starting to talk to people. And I get this call one day from a recruiter, and said, hey, hi, I'm from Rising Sun Pictures, we're in Adelaide, Australia, and we have this position, we have an opening for a head of 3D, thought you might be interested. And I had heard of the company. It's still, like you said, Paul, it's a good name within my industry, so
Right.
I was aware of it. So I went, oh, this is kind of interesting. So I went home, helped put the kids down to bed, sat down on the couch with my wife, and went, so I got a call today from a company in Australia. She goes, yeah, we're not moving to Australia. And I was like, so and I went, yeah. I don't think so either. But you know what? It's probably good to like go through the interview process, and it's good to keep those skills up. I haven't done that in a few years. So I started preparing that and stuff. And a couple days later, my wife Laura comes to me and she goes, what would it look like if we moved to Australia? And I went, oh, okay. So we talked about that, and a couple days later was, so it sounds interesting to move to Australia. And then a couple days later it was, I'm kind of interested in moving to Australia. So it kind of snuck up on us, over the course of a few weeks. And then
That's a
we made
big
a decision.
thing.
A couple months later, here we are. And we lived in Canada. I mean, it's Vancouver. It's like Canada light. But we lived
Right.
in Vancouver twice. And so, in fact, our daughter was born there. So she's a dual citizen. And so we've moved, to another country. But these are all still English-speaking countries, so it's still a little safe.
Sure.
Or at least mostly speak English. Some days you still sit there and you go, I'm sorry, what?
So
Yeah.
it's two kids, right? Or three?
Yes.
Two.
Yeah, two. Yeah,
Two.
7-year-old.
Okay, you
son
said
and
yes
a
to both those
5-year-old
things.
daughter. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Paul's putting up, counting fingers here.
Sorry.
Yeah, two
Sorry.
kids.
So two kids. So
kids,
that's a
yes.
huge feat. What was the hardest thing about moving, not only just to another country, but literally around the world?
Yeah, we didn't know anybody here. At least when we went to Vancouver, is in the same time zone.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a super long flight, and we actually had friends from past work and stuff and family wasn't too. We have family in Seattle, so it wasn't super far away. So this was we sold a ton of stuff. We put everything in storage, and we just came with 8 suitcases because you can bring on an international flight, you get 2 suitcases apiece, and that was it. And I think 1 suitcase was just Legos. That was it. So, and that was an adventure. And because even though I'd worked with a lot of Australians, there's a different thing of like landing and you're tired and people are saying things to you with an accent that you're not quite used to yet. And you're going, I'm sorry, you want me to do what? And trying to kind of figure all that out. I mean, we miss family. Family's all still mostly in LA. That's where we're from originally. And in fact, my in-laws were just here a couple of weeks ago, so we still kind of had some arrangements so we can still see family. So that's still probably the toughest thing, but the kids adapted really well. There's been a lot of great things for them and for us as a family. It's still kind of been really good for us to uh, become, closer together. And even I said we're from LA, my dad was in the U.S. military, so I moved around a lot as a kid. So didn't phase me as much, and if anything, I think it was really beneficial. So we kind of were interested in giving our kids some opportunity, especially at these ages, to live in different places, try out some new things, and kind of see the world. Because at some point we'll want to kind of more stabilize and give them some more consistency where they can develop more long-term friendships and a lot of stuff like that.
Yeah, because your high school was in Germany, right?
Yeah, I went to high school in Germany, and that's where I wanted to go to USC before that, but that's where I ended up applying from and
Right.
flying out for the interview, and then coming to orientation from. Yeah,
It's interesting how the world works, that this is kind of the life you're giving your kids.
yeah. It's before essentially they were 4 and 6, they'd already lived in 3 countries. And that was,
Wow.
again, still English speaking, but it was
Still cool,
still
though.
kind of
Yeah, that's
still
awesome.
a fun opportunity. Our daughter walks around, and if you ask where she's from, she'll right now she'll say she lives here, but she lived in California. But I was born in Canada. She's very proud of this fact. So
It's what makes her
um,
unique. It's her
yes,
identifying factor. So they like 5 and 7 now? Is that the ages?
yeah, yeah,
Wow,
5 and 7.
really cool. That's really, really cool, man.
Yes.
And when you look back on all of these, pictures that you've worked on and just really cool storytelling, things that you've been involved in and done different things, is there one that stands out as like one you're really, really proud of, as far as like this is the work where I could see what I did?
Um, it kind of comes in a couple different ways. There's certain projects that come along that during the making of it, there's something special here, and you're
Mm.
really excited. And for me, there were 2. That was Kung Fu Panda. You kind of were along the ride of making it, and you're watching it kind of come together and going, there's something really special here. This is gonna, I think, be something people really love. And then Life of Pi was one that you just kind of feel there was a different level of artistry and kind of emotion that was kind of going into it. The opposite is sometimes you work on something you think is going to be hilarious. I worked on Land of the Lost with Will Ferrell that I thought was going to be amazing, and I was so excited, thought it was so funny. Took my in-laws to the screening, and just sat there like head in hands.
Oh no.
But I don't know. The it's weird. There's other ones where you feel like the work you did, you're really proud of seeing it on screen, but it's not a movie that people may really enjoy or respect or something like that. So,
Yeah.
or it's kind of certain moments. Like I worked on Snow White and the Huntsman, and that was kind of it's not as well of a household name of a film, but at the time was really kind of beautiful. And there's some really kind of beautiful moments that I feel I helped kind of bring to life, that kind of these snapshots of magic and things like that. Kind of you'd be really proud to see it on screen. I think that's one of the fun things for me is that while there's a number of ways my career could have gone, one of the fun things about my career in the film industry is being able to kind of say to friends and family who aren't as intimately connected to it, hey, here's this thing, you get to see it yourself on screen. You can go. So like my grandmother went and saw Ford versus Ferrari yesterday, right? And to be able to say, hey, you get to participate in my,
Yeah.
the product that comes from my work, I guess, and get to kind of enjoy it in a sense with me. And that's been a lot of fun for the past, I don't know, 15, 20 years, I guess.
That's
Yeah.
awesome. And how do you think in that 15, 20 years doing what you do, how do you think, obviously technology changes, but what do you think is one of the biggest changes that exists in your industry?
Um, there's complete essays and documentaries written on this. No, I think for us, there's a few different things. I think and this could easily turn into a kind of economic, political, discussion of the impact of globalization and things. And I was fortunate to kind of be at a company that was in on it at the beginning, but I feel approached it from a very productive manner, but seeing the work, I'll generically use the term outsource, but it's a far more complex than that term kind of indicates. But seeing that work kind of spread around the world to different companies that can provide different levels of quality at different price points, and how does that create competition, both healthy and unhealthy? And I think that's kind of been a significant change. The interesting thing about technology is that technology allows us to do more impressive things, but also allows us to do them faster. But the amusing thing is everything's not equal. And so there are certain movies that, for whatever reason, everything kind of comes together really well. And so you get X movie done in some number of months, but now the studios come back and they go, great, that means every movie can be done that fast. And so that's our new baseline, and that's what we're going to hold all of you to. And so it's the creative industry it's a different animal than a traditional kind of product type of workflow, where you bid on something. It's not go, oh, okay, it's going to cost us this much to develop this product, and then we have a daily kind of cost for materials or something else to make this with a profit. We go, hey, okay, it's going to cost us this much to make that shot. And so we go to get into it, and then everything's tracking, and we think we're on budget for it. And then they go, oh, you know what? We didn't actually want a flying dragon. We actually wanted a talking dog. And you're going, oh, okay, that's fine, but we already gave you this much. You need to pay us for the flying dragon that we already did. No, but that's not what we want in the end. So because of that, we're not going to pay you for that part. We're just going to pay you for the talking dog. So you got to scratch it. And so it's a creative approach is a lot different, but it's all still problem solving, just slightly different aspect, I guess.
Shifting scope is my favorite term.
Yes, shifting. Yes,
that's why I like even the term, is that everything's a perspective. What a client wants, what a deliverable is, what a product is. And it's like, well, you've been doing that much work, just like change the color. It's not typing in something into a keyboard.
Yeah.
And I think because I also have sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
Because I also have a software development team, it's like a different half of my brain as well, because they, in a sense, are also delivering a minimum viable product to their client, which is my other team, right? So they're, so we're handling those kinds of conversations internally as well. So it keeps everybody on their toes really nicely.
So obviously, because you're leading these teams, it's a little different. But would you say you consider yourself an artist or an engineer then?
Yes.
Yes to all of them. Okay.
I mean, I still jump in. I mean, now it's a lot of management and supervision, but I'll still jump in and give creative comments. So I'm not on the box, what we refer to as being on the computer actually doing. Although I guess I did a few things a couple months ago, but typically it's me going, I don't think that looks right. That doesn't look, can we try this technique? Can we try that? That's not looking the way I would like it, and trying to kind of hold my team to a certain level of quality here and there. But at the same time, kind of jumping in with the software developers and going, hey, I don't think that's going to work the way you want, or can you make sure you split up the product in this way, because we need to be able to iterate on this part of the component versus this part or something else. So there's still a lot of that as well. I think I've tried to, toe that kind of fine line, because I really enjoy both, and so I don't like putting myself in a box to say I'm either. I guess I'm just. I work in this industry, in visual effects, and I just love it, whatever it, because now there's, I'm also a manager, I do HR stuff, and there's a lot of other kind of components that, the higher you go up as well.
Isn't it amazing how much time that stuff takes?
Oh, yes, incredibly so. And since I have department heads, there's a lot of, me training them in leadership and giving them feedback on how they're, working with their teams. And so it's a different now tier of management, where it's not just me directly managing, but me managing the managers is kind of another level of things as well. So but those are all challenges. I love people still, so like those are all still fun challenges. And yeah, although I will say, if I was with a group of artists, I'd say it an artist. If I was at a group of engineers, I'd say it was an engineer. So
and I bet they think the opposite in each of those respective groups too.
Sorry?
I bet they think the opposite in each of those respective groups too, right? Where you're in the group of artists,
Sometimes.
you're like, well, he's the engineering guy, so he's here to balance
Yeah.
this out. And then in the engineering group, well, is he kind of more the artsy engineer? So you really walk that line carefully, I bet. And I mean that
You
as a
kind of
compliment.
you have to represent both. It's such a technology driven industry,
Mhm.
that if we were just artists, we'd just be on paper or something like that. But because it's all has such a significant technology focus. So this conference I went to a couple weeks ago is the annual SIGGRAPH conference, and SIGGRAPH is one of the special interest groups of ACM, which is like the computer science, the global computer science organization. So it's still its roots are a computer science conference, and a there's a ton of presentations about new algorithms and research that's being done at universities. And then there's this, you're in one room, you walk to the next room, and it's a presentation on how they animated Frozen or something, and it's this kind of fun. So even the conference itself is tries to ride that fine line, because it's both come together to kind of allow us to do the work that we do.
That's great.
Yeah.
So one last question, as we've been going for so long here, so I appreciate your time. But we get so many questions from students that I'll kind of summarize into one specific version of it. But I don't know if I want to become an engineer or a computer scientist, because I just don't want to sit behind a laptop and code all day. So what do I do? And I always try to tell them there's more to it than that. But can you respond to that, as far as someone looking at engineering or computer science as a degree when they have grander ambitions than just being a code monkey or just someone that's always stuck in a cubicle?
I don't think I know anybody, including all our software developers, who just sit behind a desk and code. I think, in fact, there's a joke that we all love it when we can get an hour, a couple hours straight to put on our headphones and do things. I definitely don't, have time to do that anymore. I think there's so much more to it with there's very few things that you're doing, I think, in software development where you would just sit back and do that. Now, I don't have experience at these huge companies that do this kind of work, but in a team like ours, and this would go for all these companies I've worked with. We've always had software development teams. DreamWorks has 100, I'm trying to remember, at least over 100 software developers, if not 200 or something. And other company at Rhythm and Hughes, we had, I don't know, 60 or 70, and all of them still met with their clients, right? They met with their users and talked about things, and they would mock up things, and there was so much about the development process and exciting, and that I don't think that it's an accurate representation to say computer science is just sitting behind a desk, I guess. I think there's so much opportunity in that process for problem solving and interacting both with people and the challenges and trying to design things, that it's kind of really exciting to kind of get away and kind of figure out a lot of those things. I'm not sure I'm exactly answering maybe what they're asking, what they're kind of looking for, but I really think there's far more to it than just sitting down. That's probably, I wouldn't say it's easy, because it's definitely not. You run into bugs and all, kind of normal things.
Sure.
You'll do, but there's so much more in the process of working with, again, the people and the problems and all these other things, that you're definitely away from your desk. That's why the joke is, hey, I wish I had 2 hours just to sit down with my headphones and code, because there's so much other stuff going on in a good way, to get me away from that.
Yeah, well, I think it's built on this somewhat kind of false assumption that you get there is a single point future for any given degree program. And so a lot of our high school students think like, well, I don't know if I want to do that for the rest of my life and only that. And so they just kind of associate only the simplest version of it. And they don't think
yeah, no, that is far. I think, and this goes back to things that I think Luis told me at the very, very beginning when I started at USC about the problem solving skills you develop as an engineer, whether in any kind of engineering, and how significant that is for whatever career path you take. So even though I have done only a couple of positions over my career that were kind of software focused, the principles and the application and be able to discuss those things has easily, been one of the foundations of, my day-to-day kind of how I approach things, how I'm able to handle things. And I think that's incredibly significant. And yeah, I don't think there's, especially computer science, I think there's so many ways for that to apply today, that, yeah, I don't think a computer science degree points to sitting at a large software development company and just doing that 40 hours a week. That's not even close to, the representative possibilities.
Yeah. Well, I think so too. I just want to make sure other people heard it from you. Anything else, Audrey, you want to talk about, or you want to close on?
I don't think so. Yeah, thank you so much. It's so cool to hear your story, and it's awesome. I think kind of my biggest note on it is just the community aspect you talked about with Viterbi. It's cool to see, talking to kind of former VSAs in the past couple of weeks, how far it carries through, not just at school having community, but then after that. So that's awesome. But
it really is a small thing, and VSAs and the student council, and I was a member of UPE, and then there's a lot of other things within engineering. I think just even the day-to-day, the way the coursework works and how many group projects and things like that. I went back and looked at my Lumen article. I was kind of reposting that and remembering my Writing 340 teams and projects we did there, and I think that's a huge benefit. Not that, in cinema, we also had group projects, but it's just a different way of approaching things. It's still kind of split up. You do your part and things like that, whereas I felt in engineering, the projects, just the work itself required a lot more kind of integration with the team that you absolutely kind of had to rely. You couldn't even move forward with your piece. It wasn't like, hey, we made a movie and it looks great, but the sound sucks or something like this. No, in engineering, like if your piece wasn't there, the whole thing fell apart. And so there was a lot of reliance on support from the entire team.
Well, Jason, again, thanks so much for spending time, especially
thanks for having me.
All the way in Australia, man. I just really appreciate you jumping on this. This is going to be awesome. And again, thank you for everything you did back in the day and you continue to do as an alumni mentor and just this involvement. This is great, man. So it's really great to talk to you. And hopefully next time you happen to be in town, you'll swing by.
We're back.
All right, Jason. See, Jason is super cool. Have you? So this is our second one. Ali and Jason, they both work together. They both know each other. They were both at the beginning. You've had to sit through these two conversations that are somewhat relatively similar about like the old days, and they just sound like old dudes. But do you see parallel lives? Do you see a lot of throughput as far as like themes in their conversations of where they are now professionally and their time back at USC?
Yeah, I was just thinking about one thing we had talked about with Ali is, well, I guess kind of different things first. We'll start with that.
They're very different people.
Yeah.
That's the cool part about it.
I guess with Jason, it was cool to see that like he really had this goal. He said kind of from middle school to work on special effects, and it was cool to see like that's really what he's done.
Yeah, reading books about Star Wars and Industrial Light and Magic and setting the facts to ILM. Like
his life, you can tell, and he was even kind of talking about it in school. He was like pretty calculated about. He got involved. He restarted the special effects club. He took these graduate graphics courses. Like this was it for him really because he was so passionate about it. But then with Ollie, as we were discussing, it was, of course, both of them have this sense of direction, but he was kind of attributing a lot to the alchemy of things and being at the right place in the right time and learning from it as you go. So I think both of them are great examples of how you can have a super set path, or you can, maybe not, and still be really successful if you have the drive. So I guess that's one different thing. But then one similar thing, of course, both of them talked a lot about the community, and I think you can tell that in the way they talk with you and refer to each other 20 years later, basically. They still have a connection and from continents apart. So that's really cool to see, especially as a current USC student. I definitely feel that as well in this episode with Jason. We kind of briefly discussed kind of those 2 a.m. nights in the lab or whatever, and sucks. It does. But then when you look back on it, you're really with your best friends. And it's, like, I'm even thinking about, like, freshman year working on a CAD project, and none of us know what we're doing. And then, but those are, like, my closest friends in engineering now. And now we're working on another CAD project.
Right.
And we know more of what we're doing.
Right.
But not
But still equally frustrating.
Yeah, this one we've actually been pretty on top of.
Oh, cool.
Knock on wood. Please,
Okay.
that's not due yet, so hopefully nothing goes wrong.
Cool.
But
they definitely had different ideas coming in. Like he was just kind of going with the flow, and he had a plan. But I still think the alchemy is part of both of their lives. It was like right place, right time, and a lot of things that happened and what happened afterward was just this. You know, I had these things that I was doing, and I had these ideas of things I like to do, and I was around these people, and it just kind of all worked out. I mean, my favorite part of this episode, and I do not mean this negatively to Jason at all, was the name dropping of like all these people he worked with, because that's just so. It's just so. And he was doing it casually and meant it so well. Yeah, that's just who he works with, and that's who was here. And it's not like we get a lot of students that is like, how can I plan that out? And that's what I want. And there is a certain level of you just got to follow your passions and just go with your nose and all that stuff.
For sure. And I think both of them do a really good job of kind of taking engineering and applying it to something else. Like, engineers at their core, in the case of Jason, also like a extremely creative person at his core. Mm-hmm. But even for me now, it's sometimes hard to see past that, like, I'm a mechanical engineer. It's, I think, good to get that kind of longer term perspective.
Well, I think the advice that everyone always gives you is advice you never want to hear, which is, don't worry, just keep doing it, it'll all work out. And you're like, no, but I want a plan. I want my odds of this happening, or I want this, this to figure out. I want to understand the data points that I can navigate, and they just don't exist. But that's where, like, I think the common thread there is just who they are as people, and how they were picking up from lots of different things as they went, and it's super cool that they have a mix there. Anything else about this episode?
Great episode from like a cinematic arts perspective and engineering. I think we really covered that, and that's really cool because, kind of like what Jason talked about, he has a team of software engineers building the tools to enable his team of artists. Mm-hmm. And I think USC, in the cinematic arts school, since I've taken a couple classes in it, it's totally that, where it's like you have artists working with these tools, and like they're really engineers too, and it all mixes. So I liked that part a lot, and I hope people can listen to it and enjoy it.
Cool.
All right.
So last thing, this is January 5th of 2020. There are 10 days left to apply to USC as a first-year applicant. So if you're in high school now and you're rounding out your the end of your winter break, and you still got some time to submit that application, so make sure you get that application in. January 15th is the final deadline for admission to USC as a first-year applicant. Make sure you get your Common App in and your USC writing supplement. If you have test scores and letters of recommendation that come in afterward, that's fine. You can always get that in later, and you can submit those on the portal. After you apply, you'll receive an email to set up your USC portal account, where you can log in and kind of check statuses and how we have everything there. But make sure you get that in by January 15th. You don't want to miss your opportunity to be part of this class. And while it is a selective admission process, the only way that we get to consider you at all is by submitting an application. So please get that in, and we really look forward to reviewing your application, and we hope that you submit it soon. So Happy New Year again, and we'll be back maybe next week.
Yeah, awesome.